Last week on the subscriber-only episode, I had my friend Jason Rantz on to talk about a story that is now getting national attention. And that is the University of Washington, UW Medicine, put out a study back in March claiming that rates of depression among transgender youth plummeted if they got gender-affirming care. There was, of course, an article put out by Jesse Singal on his Substack that totally disproved that entire thesis. There wasn't evidence in the study to show plummeting rates of depression. Even the study researchers ended up coming out in internal emails and saying, yeah, we didn't find any evidence that there was reduction in depression rates. And so, you had this study that went out that had this, really, I think, harmful narrative. If you're a parent who has a trans child and you're debating, do I get them gender affirming care? And then you see this press release from UW Medicine saying that if you get your child gender affirming care, it can save their lives and prevent them from committing suicide. That's a very serious thing. And for UW to get it so wrong and to put out that full statement when the study didn't show anything of the sort is very concerning. And so I had Jason Rantz on because he talked about, he had done, once the news came out that this study wasn't what they claimed it was, Jason Rantz did a public disclosure request, got his hands on some internal emails from the University of Washington that showed they wanted to just bury this. That they said explicitly only conservative news outlets are asking about the error, and we're not even going to respond to them because they have an agenda. I mean, the agenda was getting to the truth. But here's a part of my interview with Jason Rantz in case you didn't catch it. What's some of the most interesting stuff you found in these email exchanges about pushback on the study?
I mean, they were really clear in these emails that they did not want to be proactive in correcting the record, even though they were responsible for the record being incorrect to begin with because they were getting positive coverage. They say that explicitly. There is one instance, one email of a doctor who was part of the study. She was on the email chain, Kim Ahrens. And originally, she had put together a statement to try to explain where the confusion was coming from. But then later on in the email chain, she said she would be comfortable not clarifying any of this at all if it means it would just bring more attention to the error. And it's like, you're a doctor. You're not supposed to hold that position. You should be a champion for making sure people get the data correct. So we're making smart decisions on how to treat patients. There are real lives attached to all the information out there, including the misinformation. And I also find it odd coming from UW, which has an entire program there that's about going after disinformation, except you've got it going on here and there doesn't seem to be any shame in any of it. They did not reach out to any of the media outlets that got it wrong. And they simply told me in a statement that, oh, well, the story wasn't really a story at that point. I'm sorry, it was a story because you got it wrong.
So after Jason Rantz's story came out, where he released all these emails from inside the University of Washington's communications team, Jesse Singal, who wrote the original takedown of the study that just demolished the core thesis of it, he put out on Twitter, he said, I've now read the full cache of emails Rantz obtained, and I cannot overemphasize how much cover was provided to UW by the fact that after my initial article, it was only conservative outlets that reached out about this scandal. And I can't agree more. And that was one of the things that I brought up with Jason. The fact that they would explicitly in one of these emails say, we're not going to proactively correct the record because it's only conservative outlets reaching out and they have an agenda. You're talking about a public university, a medical entity, a study that's supposed to be based on scientific data, and they're not going to correct it proactively, publicly, because it's only conservative outlets reaching out. And I told Jason it troubled me that it was only conservative outlets reaching out, that you wouldn't have other news agencies who published the initial report as it was framed be angry by that, be angry by being misled, by in turn misleading their readers and their viewers, that they would reach out to UW and say, hey, why did you guys tell us that this study found something that it didn't? You would hope that every entity that published an article would do that. Jesse Singal went on to say, the comms team is explicit about this over and over in their internal emails. Because it's the College Fix and the Daily Caller reaching out, they see no need to engage or respond. Lib outlets had no interest in pursuing a story about a hospital distorting suicide research. So over the weekend, I was kind of hard on King 5 News in Seattle because King 5 News is one of the outlets that put out the kind of initial findings without really questioning it, what Jason Rantz refers to as press release reporting. Like they get the press release from UW. Oh, wow. This study found that gender-affirming care plummeted rates of suicide among youth. Let's type up an article about it and not question it at all. And so the King 5 News, which is the NBC affiliate in Seattle, had an article that they put up in March, right after the study came out, saying gender-affirming care reduced depression in 60% of teens in University of Washington study. And then their article went on to talk about it from a political standpoint, how Texas Governor Greg Abbott recently issued a directive ordering the Department of Families and Protective Services to open child abuse investigations against parents who help their transgender children receive gender-affirming care. And so King 5 quotes a researcher saying gender-affirming care is life-saving care. So basically, King 5 is pushing the exact agenda that UW wants to push here. Well, as of over the weekend, King 5 News had not corrected this article, and they knew that it was incorrect. They knew it was inaccurate. I don't know if King 5 News saw the Jesse Singal article, but Jason Rantz reached out 8 days ago now to King 5 News, to their news director, and reached out to them on Twitter to say, hey, this article is inaccurate, and basically, are you going to correct it? Never heard back. I also know internally that there were individuals at King 5 News who had brought attention to this because of what they were seeing on Twitter. King 5 News didn't correct the article. So what I put out over the weekend on Twitter was basically meant to be a call to action for King 5 News to do something. I said, King 5 Seattle has known for at least 7 days that this article on the impacts of gender-affirming care is false, yet they have not removed or corrected it. I mean, I would suggest just removing it so no parents stumble upon it and just say, oh, this is what the study found, when it didn't. And I ended by saying, ask yourself why. And I think if you're being truthful with yourself, the reason is because they want the study to be accurate. They don't want to have to give in to pressure from like conservatives to correct a story about trans teens, gender identity, etc. But one of the reasons why I said I think it's particularly important that King 5 News do so, they have their actual saying, their slogan for their news station is, "We stand for truth." They do these commercials, "We stand for truth." Do you, though? Do you stand for truth? You know, truth can be inconvenient. It can make us angry. The truth isn't always going to be what we hope it is. The truth isn't always going to align with our worldview. But we just have to accept that. And particularly as journalists, you have to accept that you're not always going to like the truth. But it's your job to find the truth anyway. So when you have a news entity that says, "We stand for truth," yet when confronted with the truth, they will not relent, you seriously have to ask yourself, if you're on the right or the left, is that a news agency I can trust? Even if I want desperately for the study to show that rates of depression plummeted in trans teens who took gender-affirming care, if that's not what the study actually shows, I want my news agencies at least to say that. I want my news agencies at least to correct the record. And if King 5 News stands for truth, there should have been no delay, no hesitancy to correct the record. And it is deeply concerning to me that they, at least at the time that we're recording this, have not. I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know if it really matters at this point, frankly, because they had an entire week to decide to do the right thing, to live up to their slogan, "We stand for truth," and they failed to do so.